Let's talk about Israel, because Netanyahu has gloated about this. In the short term, it does seem to benefit Israel in the sense that, as we said before, Syria is the transit point for weapons and aid to Hezbollah. Hezbollah troops were fighting for Assad. They withdrew just before the fall of Assad. Israel has moved forward in the buffer zone on the Golan Heights. They've moved tanks. This is occupied Syrian territory. So just as in Lebanon, they've used this moment to seize more land. Israel, like the U.S., has bombed supposedly weapons facilities, intelligence facilities in Syria. But this question I have to ask you. I don't see how an Islamic state, and I agree with your assessment of Jolani, of course, I don't see how an Islamic state in Syria in the long term is beneficial to Israel. But perhaps you can talk about all that.
Okay, because, we have to go back a little bit and look, there's been this huge change in Israel from just over a year ago, when the whole paradigm of Israel was overturned, and suddenly we saw the Mizrahi coming into the government, into it. They were already antagonistic to the European-style Israelis from the kibbutzniks, the Ashkenazi. They were hostile to them. They had three agendas, basically. They had one agenda was to establish Israel on the land of Israel. Translated, no Palestinian state. The second one was to create, if you like, a really Jewish state, Jewish in spirit, and they think that they have it. And the third element was halakhic law to come in. I mean, the seculars in Israel didn't like this one bit, and Israel is deeply divided on this front and other fronts at the moment, almost to the point of civil war, just short of it. Netanyahu has become ever more authoritarian, controls literally everything personally. He has a coalition which is very much at the right, but the other important change that's taken place is an epistemological change. They're no longer secular. The Israelis that you might have known in the 70s and 80s who were secular Europeans, these people are biblical. And there's an eschatological element to it, which changes the epistemological. There's no point talking about rationality and does this make sense or is this in the interest, because they have a vision, and it's not about just the vision, but the vision requires and mandates your commitment and your belief in it. You're not supposed to reason with it, you take it. And this is the vision of the future. So there's this been big change. And moving towards this, Israel has moved through what I call magical wars. The wars are quite magical. I mean, in Gaza, it's a great victory. It's a huge, even though it isn't a victory at all, it's far from it. Hamas is still there, but it's presented as a huge victory, and already they are organizing for settlers to come in and take the land of northern Gaza, and subsequently to repopulate that. Settlers are already putting their names down to be in the settlements of Gaza. And then they say in West Bank it's also a great victory because Smotrich, who's a minister in the cabinet, Minister of Defense, as well as administration of the West Bank, he's actually delegitimizing the whole of the Palestinians in the West Bank. And then they claim a great victory against Hezbollah in south of Lebanon, even though they've suffered enormous losses, had to pull all the reserves out. So they're in a fix because the army it doesn't have enough men. It's about 20% understaffed for the commitments it's already got. And increasingly, reservists are not showing up to duty. The army say they're exhausted, but primarily they say there's no plan. There's no structure. What are our objectives? What are we actually trying to do? Oh, this is a little bit sort of rational. He isn't on the same page. He's working towards the grand victory, which is something different. So we've had all these sort of magical constructs. And so the magical part of it now is Syria, another great victory for Iran on the route to the war on Iran. So this is what it's all about, showing how it's successful and it's going on, and now the final cherry on the cake is to persuade the United States that it has to support Israel in its war on Iran. And of course, suddenly we have the nuclear weapon being presented as if you like, the motive for this war. And you see Trump even now saying, oh, well, what's happened? You know, it's partly to do with Ukraine, but it's also because of Israel's fighting successes. Well, most Israelis would say, yeah, we haven't got any successes. This is all, you know, magical. I describe it as like, it's like a Ponzi scheme. You know, this is a financial scam. But in this case, it's a geopolitical Ponzi scheme in the sense that everything is a victory for Israel. Everything is taking us closer to ultimate victory. Ultimate victory is to get rid of the head of the octopus, which is Iran. And we're moving towards this great victory. And there are all these people trying to stop us. Biden is trying to stop us. All sorts of people are trying to stop us. But we're on it. So it's very important, like a Ponzi scheme, if you stop making money, the thing crashes. If you find people sort of withdrawing money from the fund and saying, well, is this really going to work? Is this really a good idea? Then you're finished. And so Netanyahu's structure is this sort of magical thinking that he's got to keep everything to be a victory, moving towards the direction that he's always wanted it to go, is pulling, inveigling the United States through some provocation that they will do on Iran into supporting a war. Now, I just add, because I don't want to give the wrong impression, I think a war with Iran would be disastrous for Israel, might even destroy Israel, and it would be a great defeat for the United States. I won't go into the reasons for that, but just to say, you know, I don't think people have thought this through. I mean, you know, it's based on the simple sort of understanding, absolute conviction in the West. Russia is weak, America is strong, Israel is strong, Iran is weak. And, you know, there's nothing you can say really against it. And then you have some 4-star general, Jack Keane, coming up on television in the US and saying, well, the Israelis have knocked out Iran's air defenses. The Israelis have damaged their nuclear program by the attack on Parchin. The Israelis have really reduced Iran. It lies naked before us. It is stunningly vulnerable. And this is what the talking heads on CNN are saying, clearly, you know, laying the grounds. Parchin is held up. But it's really no different from when Colin Powell went on television all those years ago, before 2006, said, you see what's in this vial here? This is weapons of mass destruction, and this is what the war is going to be about. They didn't strike anything at Parchin. There's clear evidence that the Israelis were not able to even fire ballistic missiles. They never got closer than 70 kilometers to the Iranian frontier. So, you know, this is a magical, it's difficult to deal with this in a Western way, like most of the audience would like me to say, you know, on the one hand, on the other hand, because we're talking about something that has moved into an eschatological, if you like, mindset, that this is ordained, this is the Bible, this is what the Torah says, this is what we are going for. And we do it because we have to believe in revelation. Forget rationality, it's revelation.